Okay, hello. Welcome to this webinar on the findings of Urban Institute's recent evaluation of financial coaching programs. The evaluation was commissioned and funded by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, with an implementation study funded by the Annie E. Casey Foundation. The evaluation report was released earlier this month and is on the Urban website. The URL is a bit long, but we can send you that, and it's pretty easy to find on our website right now. Brett Theodos, Senior Research Associate at the Urban Institute, will present the study findings, and I'm Mark Trescon, a Research Associate here. We are joined by Irene Skricky, Senior Financial Education Program Analyst at CFPB, who will say a few words about the project.
Great.
Representatives from the two...
Oh. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to go through the intro really quickly. So representatives from the two financial coaching programs in the study will provide background on coaching and comment on some of the study's findings. They are Karina Ron, the Associate Director of Financial Stability Services at Branches, and the Director of the United Way Center for Financial Stability in Miami, Florida, and May Watson-Grote, the Founder and Executive Director of the Financial Clinic in New York City. Regina Sally was the Program Associate at the Annie E. Casey Foundation, who will offer reflections on the study. And also joining us will be J. Michael Collins, Associate Professor and Faculty Director at the Center for Financial Security at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and currently also affiliated with the CFPB. Now, we have a lot to cover today, so I'm going to turn it over to Irene right now. I have two quick housekeeping notes. First, we are slated to go for 1 hour and not 2, as the invite webpage states. And second, I will compile questions for you to submit in the Q&A panel, which you should all have visible. We have a lot of participants. We might not get to everything, but we'll do our best. So with that, I'll hand it over to Irene.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Mark. I'm Irene Skricky with the Office of Financial Education at the CFPB, and I am delighted to be kicking off this webinar to discuss the results of the research on financial coaching. I want to thank all of you for joining this webinar today. I think the number of participants who signed up is a sign of the level of interest in this topic and in this study. We have several hundred who are participating. As many of you probably know, the CFPB is the newest federal government agency. We're just 4 years old. And the mission of the CFPB is to make markets for consumer financial products and services work for consumers by making rules more effective, consistently and fairly enforcing those rules, and empowering consumers to take more control over their economic lives. Empowering consumers, to us, includes supporting their ability to make financial decisions and to choose and use financial products in ways that will help them meet their own life goals. And as you know, those are key attributes to financial coaching, to the model of financial coaching. And it's really because of this connection to our mission that the CFPB commissioned this research on the impact of financial coaching programs. We think coaching is a promising strategy, and we also recognize the need in general for more evidence to indicate how and when financial education strategies can improve consumer financial decision-making. So this study, I think, really provides some of that evidence. Using an experimental design, the study allows for the first time a fully causal assessment of the impact of financial coaching on consumers served by the programs, and finding robust effects in an evaluation of financial coaching is particularly challenging because, again, as many of you know, coaching services are driven by the individual consumer's own goals and needs. And so each person has a different starting situation and different goals, making it a little harder to measure. But the design of this research really allows us to separate the effects of the program from the characteristics of the people likely to seek coaching. And so we do find effects, but I am not going to tell you those right now. I'm going to leave that for the other presenters to cover, so you'll have to be patient for just a few more minutes. But I'm really excited about this webinar about this work, really, because first, it's the first RCT on coaching that's been done, randomized control trial. Also because the researchers found interesting results, which you'll hear about in a minute, and because of the implications of the findings for all of us. Those are the kind of the lofty reasons why I'm excited. But I'm also excited for a very mundane reason, which is that this is the very first project started by the Office of Financial Education after we were started up almost 4 years ago, and so it is very satisfying to see it come to completion after all these years, and it's really great fun to be able to help release it. And so on that note, I want to thank all the people who worked so hard and contributed to this over the last 4 years of the study, the Urban Institute, the Financial Clinic Branches, all the study participants, also the Annie Casey Foundation, as Mark mentioned, for separately funding the companion process evaluation, which really adds so much to the richness of the report. So, the findings, we will be using the findings to inform our own work to empower consumers, and we hope that it will provide similar value to everyone else working on that goal as well. So welcome everyone, and I look forward to hearing all your questions and comments as we move through the results. So thank you very much. Who's next?
Yes, I'm turning over to May Watson. Oh, you got it?
Thank you, Mark. Yes, this is May from the clinic, and I think the task turns to me to define financial coaching, and then I'll just take a brief moment to give everybody an overview of the financial clinic. But first of all, thanks to Urban and the team for bringing us together for this presentation. All of the various players have been meeting together for so often over the course of this long study that it's really lovely to have so many hundreds of people joining us. So financial coaching is a collaborative process over a series of meetings between a coach and a customer that has 4 characteristics. One is outcomes driven, so it's differentiated from financial education. Our financial coaching metrics are designed to detect behavior change. 2, it draws from the field of positive psychology, and that it fosters a customer's inherent strengths. And our purpose is to move them, to help move our customers towards their financial goals. The 3rd characteristic is that we stress really taking a judgment-free approach. Our customer is in the driver's seat. And then 4th, I think a lot of the success of this service rests in the mutual accountability between the financial coach and their customer. For a wider lens on what financial coaching is and isn't, I very much encourage folks to check out Dr. Michael Collins' Financial Coaching as an Asset Building Strategy on the Asset Funder Network's website. So just by way of a brief overview of the financial clinic, the clinic is a 10-year-old nonprofit organization whose mission is to build the financial security of working poor Americans. We have put $42 million into the pockets of 25,000 working poor customers in a lot of different diverse settings, including work that we do with the New York City's Department of Consumer Affairs through their financial empowerment centers. We also work with Single Stop USA through the City University Community College system. And if you think of that work as our business to our consumers or our B2C work, our B2B work features training and technical assistance and capacity building that we've delivered now to over 2,000 practitioners from 240 organizations across 26 states. In the future, we'll be marrying these 2 strategies, moving forward in a financial security ecosystem that we think of as a dynamic community that creates new value through partnerships and collaboration. So thank you, and I will hand it over to Karina Ron from Branches.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us, and I am very pleased to be here, and overall, I think we're all very excited about being able to share our experience with everyone that's joining us today, so thanks for having us. I definitely concur with May on how she's exposed the basics of financial coaching, and I'm sure, as you'll see, our programs actually have a lot of similarities in how we approach financial coaching and our work. And so, just so you know that, to give you a sense of Branches is a faith-based organization. Actually, we've been serving South Florida for over 40 years now. It's very community focused. We're very big on partnering with the community and kind of working together to bring about change, and we have a very long-term focus for all of our programs. So Branches has 2 main streams of programs. One stream is focused on student achievement, and the other stream is focused on financial stability. I lead the financial stability programs, and within that, we provide a couple of different services, everything from emergency services, small business development, a Ways to Work car loan program, for those of you who may be familiar with the national model. And of course, we have a center that is focused on specifically financial services that's in partnership with our local United Way. It's called the United Way Center for Financial Stability. And that's really the program that has been the focus of this study. So in our model for the United Way Center for Financial Stability, it's seen as a kind of a central coordinating body that promotes integration across all of our other services, both at branches and with our community partners, which is about more than 40 organizations that we partner with. And at the very core of what the CFS does is financial coaching. So in other words, while we provide a range of services within the CFS and across the other programs, the goal is always to have clients consider and hopefully engage in that longer-term financial coaching relationship. And so it was very important for us to participate in this study because it's such an important part of our program model and our framework overall. And just to give you a sense, the CFS itself and the coaching program itself has been around since 2009. So we're a little bit newer than the financial clinic, but in just these past 5 years, we've served about 16,000 people. And so it's something that is definitely growing, and we're a part of several larger collaboratives in South Florida, hoping to move the work forward. That's pretty much us in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you both. And with that, I want to move to Brett Theodos, who will actually be reporting on the report findings.
Great. Thanks, Mark, and thanks again for everybody joining us today. I've got the hard job of summarizing a 205-page report in 15 minutes. So if you all will bear with me, we're going to move quickly through some of this, but we have documented everything extensively in the report, and we would be happy to refer you to that if you want to dive deeper into any particular element. So a few thoughts on study background, beginning with the programs. You've heard from the two programs, financial coaching at branches in Miami, Dade County, and the clinic in New York City. The goals of these programs and of the clients entering are quite varied. Irene alluded to that at the beginning, but it is a variety of things around improving credit, savings, debt, accessing new access to credit, other financial-related issues such as budgeting. And in terms of the target population for the coaching and therefore for the study, both programs are targeting low and moderate income individuals, and we'll describe with some figures some differences between them in a minute. By way of an introduction to the evaluation itself, Irene alluded to it, this is a random control trial study. So what that means is that people applied to participate in the coaching, and they had a chance at random to receive the coaching or to not. And one question that comes up a lot in this context is, how is it ethical to deny people access to a service that they could benefit from? And the answer to that is, if there's already a constraint on supply of the service because the programs don't have the resources to meet the demand that's out there, then one actually very fair way to sort out who gets treatment is to randomize it, to flip a coin in essence. And so that's what we've done in this study and taken advantage of that fact to be able to have an impact study attached to it. So specific data sources that we used for this evaluation included a baseline survey administered at the point of application. Each program had administrative data that they tracked using so that we could learn about things like when people met with a coach, how often they met with the coach, what their specific objectives were. We also administered a follow-up survey that was online or by telephone or even in person. We also accessed credit bureau records, which we matched at an individual level to survey records. So we were able to have information both that was self-reported and more objectified information that came from the credit bureau. And we completed a process study, and this was the part funded by the Annie E. Casey Foundation, where we did observations of coaching sessions, we did interviews with senior staff, line staff, clients, and we also did focus groups as well. So the first thing that I'd like to get to in terms of findings is talk about study enrollment. So we had 945 applicants to the study and split almost evenly between the treatment group and the control group. Now, the enrollment pathway for branches was principally through county agencies. So this is important. These are employees within county agencies that were the lowest pay tier. So folks who were cleaning at the Port of Miami, folks who were doing mosquito control or trash pickup. So people who had stable jobs, but for whom those jobs were fairly low paying. There was also some enrollment through housing partners. These are nonprofit providers where the individuals that were referred there sometimes are not ready to purchase a home, and they were sent over to branches. At the financial clinic, there was a variety of enrollment strategies. First was through tax time at VITA sites, so people came in to get their taxes prepped and then were offered coaching. If they were interested, then they were randomized into the study. Also, the clinic held financial education workshops at a variety of partner sites as a way to enroll people into the study, where people who participated in a workshop were then offered access to coaching itself. So let's look at some baseline characteristics of study participants so you can get a sense of who the people are that enrolled in coaching and in the study. So you can see, looking at some demographic characteristics, that at branches and at the clinic, the age was fairly comparable at the mean. The gender mix was fairly even at both sites, but marriage rates were a lot higher in the Miami site than in the New York site. There was a fairly diverse group of enrollment by race ethnicity, though higher enrollment rates among blacks and Hispanics and Latinos at both sites than other groups. Looking at some of the financials, you can see that a big difference in employment, and this stems from the ways that clients enrolled in the program. So at branches, almost 9 out of 10 people were employed full-time or self-employed at the point of the baseline, whereas at the clinic that was significantly smaller, just 43%. And you can see that that certainly is part of the story in terms of differences in income. So at branches, the average household income was just under $40,000. Well, at the financial clinic, again, this is household income, it's at $22,000 at the average, which for living in New York is not a lot of money. We have some other characteristics here. The one thing that I'll point out to you is credit score. In both sites, the credit scores are sub 600, though at branches somewhat higher than at the financial clinic. The next thing that I'd like us to turn to is understanding take-up for this service. So what you'll see here is a figure with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus along the bottom. Those are the number of times that people actually got coaching. So remember, when people said they were interested in participating in the study, they were randomized into either the treatment group or into the control group. Well, not everyone who is assigned to the treatment group actually then follows through on getting coaching. So I'm going to use a couple of terms that I want to define for you here. So one is the treatment group. That's everyone who had access to coaching. And then the next is the treated group, those who really showed up. And so you can see from this slide, not everyone who had access actually showed up. If you look at this number, what you can see is at branches, 163 people in the treatment group didn't show up, and at the clinic, 102. And what that works out to in percentage terms is that at the clinic, roughly 55% of people in the treatment group took up the service, and at branches, it was roughly 38%. So this is a phenomenon that occurs in all sorts of social programs where take-up is optional. Remember, it's not required. So people may have said they were interested, but their life circumstances changed, or they no longer felt it was worth connecting the two buses, or their work schedule changed, or any number of reasons. But it's an important point to understand when we begin to think through the analysis, because as I'll explain later, it has important implications for understanding the way that we conduct the analysis in a random control trial study. The other thing I wanted to call your attention to on this slide is that not everybody who is showing up 3, 4, 5, or more times. There's still a fair proportion of people who are showing up once or twice. And so that also is important for understanding the findings, because to the extent that we see gains, and we do, and I'll go into those in several areas, it appears that people are able to benefit even if they're not meeting multiple times with their coach. So that's it by way of background and introduction to the study participants, and to the actual receipt of the coaching services themselves. Next, I'm going to turn to some of the preliminary outcomes and some of the longer-term outcomes that we saw related to savings and debt. I'm going to spend a fair amount of time orienting you to this first table so that it can make sense. And then I'm going to whip through the other ones pretty quickly after you've got a handle on how to interpret it. So for those who aren't quantitatively minded, just bear with me, and I'll try to make this as explainable as possible. So and the other thing I wanted to add is that I'm going to show results here from a handful of outcome indicators. We have multiple times more outcomes that we've investigated and that we report on in the full report. So if there's an outcome here that you're not interested in, feel free to ask a question, or else check the report itself to see if we're actually able to inform that measure. Okay, so I want to start with a fairly simple measure, which is the number of savings deposits. And this is a key outcome from the program's perspectives because it reflects a behavior, an attitude, and then ultimately a behavior orientation towards savings. So this is literally just the number of times you made a deposit into a savings account. And let's start with the branches row so we can know how to interpret this. So what this is saying at follow-up, at the point where we did our follow-up survey, that the control group, those that did not have access to the coaching services, they made 13.7 deposits. That's from the baseline to the follow-up. They made a number of 13.7 deposits. Now the treatment group, again, that's everybody offered access to coaching. That's not those who actually showed up. That's everybody who got offered it. They reported at follow-up 15.6 number of deposits. So what you start to think there is, well, maybe the treatment group is higher than the control group. And there's a couple ways that we want to get at that. And that's really what we're trying to assess in this kind of study is, relative to the control group, can we see that the treatment group is better, is higher, or if the outcome is one you'd seek to diminish, like debt, is lower. But either way, can we show improvements for the treatment group relative to the control group? And then, because of the randomization, we can attribute those changes to the intervention itself, to the coaching services. So those are the first two columns of figures there. Then the third column that says ITT is intent to treat. And basically what that means is the same question of what's the difference between the treatment group and the control group in just numeric terms. And so you can see now it's 2.6 roughly, let's call it. That's pretty close to if you were to subtract the control mean from the treatment mean. So roughly the difference between the treatment mean and the control mean, the difference between those that had access to coaching and those that didn't, is about 2.6. So what you can say there is, on average, those that were offered access to coaching made 2.6 more deposits. Now, just one slight complication to this is that even if in a randomization study you, let's say, flip a coin a number of times, you're not going to end up with exactly even groups. So imagine that you had 10 pennies and you flipped them each. You wouldn't end up necessarily with exactly 5 heads and 5 tails. You might have 6 and 4 or something like that. And so what this third column, when it says regression adjusted, it just means that we've introduced some statistical controls there to try to make sure that that treatment group, those heads and those tails, look exactly alike. And so the reason that you will see that third column does not precisely equal the second column minus the first column is because we've introduced some statistical controls. So wouldn't encourage you all to dwell on that necessarily if this is a new concept, but the basic takeaway is what I want to draw your attention to most is that third column, intent to treat, which is the average effect for people offered coaching. And in this case, you could say that those at branches made 2.6 more deposits, those offered coaching. Now the last column that I want to dwell on, and again, I'll pick up the pace for the other slides here, but I want to make sure that you're oriented to this. The last column is what's called treatment on the treated. And in that column, what we're trying to do is estimate what the effect of coaching is on those who actually got it. So remember that third column is the average effect for all those offered coaching, that is all those in the treatment group. But remember our earlier slide, only 55% of people at the clinic took up coaching and 38% took up coaching at branches. So it also would be really nice to be able to describe what the effect on coaching is for those who actually got coaching. This gets tricky and complicated because now we're back in the world of people being able to take up coaching because they're motivated to do so. And so it's hard from a research design perspective to say with as much certainty here that the changes we're seeing are really a result of coaching and not a result of self-selection, motivation, ability, aptitude, those sorts of things. So what I'll do is I'll give you both numbers, and some people will really gravitate towards the intent to treat, the effect for everybody offered coaching. Some people intuitively will like to gravitate towards the number of that reflect those who actually took up coaching. So I'll give you both of them. Okay, so with that long-winded introduction to this slide, the takeaway substantively is that at both sites we can see some modest but important increases in the number of savings deposits. Okay, let's look at our next outcome indicator, which is total account balance. So what you can see there is that this is savings, is that savings at branches maybe look like it went up. But what you don't see there on the branches numbers are those little asterisks. And those asterisks are in reference to statistical significance, which you could think of as our ability to confidently say that those numbers are different from zero. So in the case at branches, even though it looks like there may be positive numbers there, we can't say those numbers are any different than zero. So we would not report that as a statistically significant finding. But for this outcome indicator, if you look at the financial clinic, what you can see is that we do detect gains in savings of around north of $1,000 for everyone offered coaching, and around $1,700 for those who actually took up coaching. And I'll just add that those are meaningful and in some ways striking gains because look over at the control mean. Look over at the average value for those who were not offered coaching, and you'll see that control or comparison metric is $1,300. So that means total in their account, these folks had on the control $1,300. So it's a pretty notable increase to raise that by $1,100 or $1,700. The next outcome that I want to turn you to, and then we'll have some time for a reflection by both of the sites before we look at some other outcome indicators, is at lower total debt. So this total debt measure is a measure that came from the credit bureau itself, so it's not self-reported. And what we can see here, in contrast to the slide before where the folks at the financial clinic were increasing savings, here it's folks at branches that are decreasing debt. So you can see again in that third column, intent to treat, the average effect for people who were offered coaching, that their debt levels went down, an average of over $10,000. Now you can see that their debt levels started a lot higher than those at the clinic. So the treatment mean, for example, and the control mean at branches are a lot higher than those are at the financial clinic. And for this outcome indicator, we don't detect that those at the financial clinic had a statistically significant decrease in debt. So I'm going to pause for a minute and let Karina and May weigh in with some of their reflections on these outcome indicators.
Sure, I can start if you like. So for us, I think it would be, it might be interesting to note that for our population, again, since coaching is really oriented towards the client's goals, our population was largely focused on alleviating debt. It was where their stress was coming from. It was what they really wanted to get a handle on. And as we'll probably see later on in some of the other results, it was more so reducing the debt than even, for example, improving their credit scores. And so this, for us, the findings made total sense because the coaching was oriented towards helping them address that problem as opposed to, for example, saving. And so clearly, for us, it was reflective of the money management work and the other things that were being done to kind of make sure that this particular goal was being achieved.
Hi, this is May. So on the debt takeaways, the study did reveal a lot of solid indicators of behavior change, like we made progress on helping our customers prioritize their debt, both balances in collections and balances on 90 to 180-day delinquencies were down, which says to us that we're helping people out of crisis. We're helping people off the ledge. Which, as Brett pointed out in those first slides on the demographics, given the unemployment rates and the very low income that our customers reflect, was very promising to us because it means we're still changing behavior. Overall, though, we're wondering whether the lack of impact might be around our debt might be because we are serving this particularly distressed population. On the other hand, savings, we are just most pleased with this aspect of the study's results. We think that savings is the best indication of progress towards achieving financial goals. So we think that at the clinic we're accomplishing mission, not only because balances went up, but also because our customers are saving more consistently, which we think is a really great reflection of building financial security.
Great. Thanks both. I'm going to walk us through a couple more outcome indicators, and we'll kind of continue this pattern of me introducing results and then having the sites reflect on what we have found. So I'll be talking next about credit scores and then about budgeting. So first, to start with credit scores, and again, this is not self-reported. This is data that we got from one of the credit bureaus. What we see is that there is a statistically significant improvement, gain in credit scores at the financial clinic, though we don't detect one at branches. So at the financial clinic, of those offered coaching, that ITT, credit scores went up an average of nearly 21 points. What you can see in those who actually showed up for treatment, that's that far right column, treatment on the treated, their credit scores went up an average of 33 points. So pretty notable gains. What you did see again is that the credit scores were a bit lower to start at the clinic than they were at branches, and they ended up lower even though there were gains. Okay, I want to next talk about budgeting. And so what we saw is that there was a statistically significant effect at the clinic, though not at branches, on the share of individuals who reported that they had a budget. So this is a self-reported number, and we asked people, do you have a budget, yes or no? And so what you see is the reported rate of having a budget was 20 percentage points higher for those offered coaching at the clinic and 31 percentage points higher for those who actually received coaching. At branches, looks like it maybe is moving the right direction, but again, we don't detect that with statistical significance. We also then asked individuals at both sites the extent to which they were sticking to a budget. And for both sites, we didn't see that the treatment group made gains relative to the control group in that indicator. Next, I'd like to talk through some measures around financial stress and satisfaction and knowledge, and then we'll have some more reflections as well. So starting with financial stress, strength of this study was our ability to combine information that was impressionistic and attitudinal with some of the more objective savings amounts, credit scores, et cetera. But this is an important measure, we thought, of attitudes and perceptions attached to finances. So what we see here is some gains at branches, some decreases in the reported level of financial stress. This is a scale, so the numbers are just a little hard to interpret, but it's a scale of 1 to 7, and so that means as on average people went down 0.5, half a point on the 1 to 7 scale for those offered coaching at branches. Well, for those who showed up, they went down over 1 point on the 7-point scale. And at the financial clinic, we don't detect an effect for those offered coaching, but we do for those who showed up for coaching. Next outcome indicator is somewhat similar to stress, but looking at the other side, is satisfaction with present financial situation. And what you see here is, again, this is a 7-point scale, is at branches we detect improvements or gains in self-reported satisfaction with one's present financial situation of about half a point on the 7-point scale, and for those who showed up, over a point. And we don't detect here any statistical change for the individuals at the financial clinic. So the last outcome indicator that I am going to report today, and again, there's a lot more in the report for you to dig into if you're interested in. The last one that I'll highlight today is relates to financial knowledge. And this is an intriguing outcome. And so what we've done here is we actually asked 8 questions of kind of financial knowledge, more abstract knowledge about things like interest and how it's calculated, or you know, whether things, how things would inflate over time. Those more abstract financial knowledge questions. And what we found is that at neither site were there gains in these abstract measures of financial knowledge, these quiz questions that we had. And so I think this is not the final word with regard to pathways of improvements, but it's one piece of evidence that potentially the gains that were made in some of the previous outcome indicators in terms of paying down debt, improving credit score, increasing savings, decreasing financial stress, increasing financial satisfaction, may not be driven by or linked to explicit gains and improvement of financial knowledge in a more abstract sense, as might be conveyed through a more typical financial education classroom type setting. So that's a quick run through a few outcome indicators, and now we're going to turn to May and Karina to digest and reflect on these outcomes.
Thanks, Brett. This is May. Well, so that the study revealed behavior change without increased financial knowledge isn't surprising given the clinic's approach. Our methodology stresses what's actionable. So we've never actually done workshops for workshop's sake, and we don't have a set financial education curricula. Our coaches convey the requisite information to make better decisions, to help our customers make those better decisions and take action steps towards their financial goals. The study has a lot of really great positive indicators that our customers are making that progress, like the one that you pointed out around their how they're feeling about their financial stress. But their ending place is still it's still very much one of being in financial distress. So it's not surprising that they're feeling more hopeful when the coaching helps, even if it doesn't entirely wipe out the stress.
This is Karina. I think for us, the financial knowledge was also a surprise, but when we actually look at the content of the survey, the questions that were specifically asked, and consider the fact that it is a little bit more abstract and general financial education, we did understand why, and I think that for us it helped kind of illuminate the approach that we're taking in some of our coaching. And so, for example, for this particular study, the coaching that we were doing was very much guided by, helping the clients reach their financial goals. And so we we experience a big challenge of transportation and other kinds of issues here in Miami, and so we try to make as much of an impact with our clients in the first couple of sessions. And in this case, we were definitely not focused on the general financial education and much more on the application of particular financial knowledge as it applied to their particular goals. And so in the end, it helped us go through that process of reflecting and analyzing a little bit more our different coaching approaches. And it helped us to actually develop a different type of service that we provide now for some of our coaching clients. So while there's still a group where we take that kind of approach where we're focused much more on making sure that you're getting the financial outcomes in a few sessions, there's also another kind of pathway for our clients now where they can come in and the focus is a little bit more on the general financial education off the bat. So it helped us create a different client flow for our coaching program.
Great, thanks to both of you. So I'll turn to a couple of implications and takeaways from the study, and then May and Karina will do the same, and then we'll have Regina offer some reflections before we turn to Q&A from you all. So if you don't mind typing in your questions, Mark will compile them and then ask them of us in just a minute. So first, turning to some key implications, I think it can be a little bit easy to get into the weeds on this study and all of the intricacies about how this test was designed and how it was conducted, and then all of the different outcome indicators. But I want us to step back and look bigger picture for just a minute. And one is that this entire coaching field is relatively young, and there has been very little, to some extent, if any, really rigorous research in the financial coaching space. And so it was a really big undertaking and a really meaningful undertaking, an important one from the field's development, from the perspective of the field's development, that both of these programs agreed to be tested in this way. The study took 4 years from start to finish, and then that we now have these results, which I would say the entire broader field can benefit from, can reference, and over time, as more studies are conducted, we can begin to do even more comparisons. But in terms of right now, we should take sufficient time to pause and reflect on what we've learned from this big study, as well as what some of the implications mean. So, some very high-level takeaways. We see that financial coaching was successful in generating some notable outcomes for individuals in the study. We saw that coaching is probably not the solution for every low and moderate income individual. Remember, people had to opt in to receive financial coaching, and of them, not everybody that even was offered it took it up. So there's certainly some people for whom coaching is going to be appropriate and of interest, and others who it's not. We also saw that coaching may have a role, more so than previously thought, as a shorter-term intervention with people able to make gains from even a smaller number of sessions. We certainly saw from the qualitative work, but also from the baseline survey reporting, that client financial situations, their goals, and their motivations differed quite widely. And related to that, we saw that how coaching was implemented varied between the two programs, and we described that at greater length in the report. And so where client backgrounds are different, where the policy contexts are different, just by way of one quick example, payday lending is not legal in New York. It is in Miami. So we saw decreases in payday lending in the Miami site, but not in the New York site. Well, that's in part because the policy context is different. So there's differences in terms of individual clients and what their objectives and motivations are and their financial situations. The policy context is different. The implementation of the two programs is somewhat different. And you mix that all together, and we see lots of differences between the two sites in terms of which outcomes were achieved here or there, whether it's savings or debt, stress, et cetera. And so one word of caution that we take away from this is in terms of extrapolating, in terms of taking these two examples and therefore knowing what your coaching program would be able to achieve or what any one individual would be able to achieve, I think it introduces some humility to say that there's a lot of differences out there, and we certainly need to know and understand more about precisely how coaching is benefiting which people. But certainly we don't want to lose the overall picture that there are important gains that people are making under this type of intervention. Okay, let's have Karina and then May come in on a few implications from their perspective.
This is Karina. For us, I think honestly the major takeaway for us was all the effect that it had on informing our processes, our services, our structure, our framework, and it really helped us kind of confirm some things that we were thinking about, shed light on some things that we had questions about. And in the end, over the past, especially I would say over the past 9 or 10 months or so, we have made a lot of changes on our program. And we've been seeing internally, based on our own metric system, we've been seeing the benefit of that. And so for us, it was a difficult process. We had to really, get buy-in from staff and leadership, and it was challenging to say the least. But the benefits that we've seen in our everyday service and even the lessons that we're taking from it that we are now able to share with other community partners as we participate in these larger collaboratives, it's really been invaluable. And so for us, from what we've seen up until now, it definitely seemed like something that was worth the investment. And we believe that there's actually still more that we have to learn. I mean, it is a very big report, and every variable and every one of the results, I think, will be continuing to have that kind of a positive impact on informing our programs for a good while to come.
Thanks, Karina. Yeah, this is May. The clinic made a number of programmatic changes as well, but maybe just in closing, I'll point to a report that the clinic and branches have crafted, can be found on both of our websites, sort of like a practitioner summary of the study. And I'll point to one of the takeaways that we do in that report, where progress, we're very impressed with the fact that progress was made regardless of demographic characteristics. What Urban report points to is there not being any heterogeneous effects, where the results show that coaching can be an effective tool for a variety of populations and not just a target demographic. Programs may want to examine their assumptions about who their ideal program participants may be, who their customers may be, and maybe perhaps even think about expanding those who are served under their programs.
Okay, thank you both again. And with that, I want to turn it to Regina Sally for some other reflections on the report before we move to the Q&A.
Thanks, Mark. So at the Casey Foundation, financial coaching is at the center of a lot of our work because of the way it supports low-income families in setting long-term goals and reinforcing motivation, as well as accountability. And because of the growing adoption of the approach both internally and into other Casey initiatives as well as externally across the field, it became increasingly important after almost 10 years of investing to understand the impact and effectiveness of financial coaching. And so we began exploring ways in which we might be able to complement this impact evaluation with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and we landed on an accompanying process evaluation. And so I'll start off by saying that we are beyond pleased that the results of this evaluation clearly indicate that coaching works. So as you just heard, we see that it works in different ways for different groups, and it's also a strong complement to other financial capability services and supports, such as financial education and financial counseling. Additionally, with the process evaluation, we now have a better sense of the how of financial coaching. So how does it work in actual practice? What are the characteristics of coaches delivering the services, and to whom is it being delivered to? So the process evaluation also helps us to better understand some of the impact outcomes that Brett just walked us through. Another takeaway is that financial coaching works best with individuals who are motivated by a specific goal. And so to sum up the qualitative findings that, were gathered through interviews, surveys, et cetera, financial coaching has positive effects on people's sense of financial well-being and confidence, and also reduces their financial stress, which we know is critical for behavior change. And so a potential next step could be to begin really drilling down on these findings and identify subsequent implications for further research, programming, and field building. Want to give a special thanks to the CFPB for your vision to research and evaluate this promising approach in the financial capability space. Thanks to the participating sites, branches, and financial clinic for your boldness and willingness to be at the forefront of this work by participating in this field building effort, the first evaluation of this kind in this space. And then finally, thanks to Urban Institute for all of your hard work with this evaluation over the past few years. And thanks to all of you for your interest and continued support of this work as we continue building the field out. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mark and Brett, to lead us through the final Q&A portion of this webinar. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So we've compiled a few questions, and I'm just going to probably start reading them off. You can keep putting yours in the Q&A panel, and I'll try to get to them. We have the numbers. I don't know if we will be able to get to all of them, but we'll do our best. So to start off with probably a big one, how do social service organizations reconcile randomization with their mandates to serve those who seek out services? This might be especially relevant for May and Karina, but anyone else, feel free to jump in.
Well,
sure,
May, you want to start, May? Okay.
Yep. Well, we absolutely deliberated the question here at the clinic, and I think, obviously, we're able to put at the end the RCT in context of the difference really between our mission and our vision. We also adopted a mantra after working with the team pretty extensively that this wasn't a denial of services, that this is going to just be a delay. And indeed, when we finally were able to wrap up with the study, the team made a really great concerted effort reaching out to all of the people that we had previously been told to, that we'd have to follow up with them at the end. But as we learned through the course of being a study, the program became a much stronger one. So that when we did engage, it would not only be better for our customers and for ourselves, but for everybody using our services. And hopefully, as Brett, I think, so aptly pointed out a little while ago, for programs across the country as well.
Great. Yeah. And the only thing I'd add that if there's a scenario where, let's say hypothetically, the clinic or branches can serve 10 people a year, and there's 20 or 30 people that are interested in those 10 slots, then there's some way that they're going to have to ration or apportion who gets it. And that often happens in less formal ways for a lot of programs. But what randomization does is it makes it more formal. But at the end of the day, the clinic is not serving any fewer people than it would be doing as a result of participating in the study, but it is somewhat formalizing the mechanism by which people get access and don't get access. And we would argue it's a very fair mechanism because everybody has an equal chance, but it does formalize it, and that is different and at times uncomfortable, but it's certainly something that can be talked through, worked through. And there are different ways that randomization happens for different studies. For another random controlled trial study I'm doing right now, everybody gets a base level of service, and then what's randomized is the top-up or additional level of service. So there's really a number of different ways that a randomization study could be designed, and in part it relates back to what needs to be tested, how much demand is there for the service, how much supply of the service it is, and is there a good point in the process that could be randomized? And are the partners invested in this process? Do they understand what it entails? Are they invested in the learning that will come from it? And it certainly takes a lot of energy and effort to set up to make it work well. So there's a commitment required there in addition.
And I would just say that for us it was similar to what May was saying. We had that long-term benefit in mind, and we knew that it would outweigh whatever issues we had to deal with during the time of the study. And for us, we focused on the re-engagement of these partners and of these clients, and that helped us address everything.
Okay. So to move on to another question. So one that came up was, since the follow-up survey wasn't actually conducted until almost 2 years after coaching started, can we say anything about long-term effects of coaching?
Well, a couple things. One, that's reasonably long-term for a lot of studies, especially given the intervention. But yes, we are interested in thinking about how we could actually take advantage of this study to do even a longer-term test. And so if there's any funders on the line, one thing we're interested in is getting access to another pool of credit bureau records so that we could follow study participants even further in time. Since those records are automatically collected, it's probably going to be too much cost to do another outcome survey. But something like a credit pull, that could happen at multiple points and be informative, absolutely.
Okay. We also had a couple questions about the programs themselves. There's a couple buckets, so I'll ask a couple related ones to start off. So just to clarify, are both programs staff-based was one of them. Another one is, how often do financial coaches meet with customers? And then related to this, and this also gets into the uptake situation, is what strategies do people use to keep coaching clients engaged with programs? I know that was a bit of a mouthful, so maybe if you want to, May or Karina might be the best place, but anyone else can jump in too.
I can start. At branches, all of our coaches are definitely staff. We actually have a couple of different levels of expertise. So we've got kind of junior financial coaches and a couple of levels to the more senior financial coaches. And we have different client paths that will make sure that people are accessing the right kind of expertise. Typically, our coaching clients come in for 3 to 5 sessions over 3 to 6 months. That's what we've seen and what we've strived to maintain over the course of the year. And in terms of the engagement, a couple of things that we actually learned from the study, which, to go back to what we were saying earlier in terms of the things that could apply to other programs nationwide, we learned that that initial contact, that first session, is really what drives the longer-term engagement. And so for us, we invest a lot of effort in, for example, again, something we learned from the study, making sure that for those who are native Spanish speakers or native Creole speakers, that the coach that's assigned to them is also a native speaker. We learned that that's something that actually does affect the longer-term engagement. And then a focus on hearing them out and having that goal conversation and making sure that they understand that we will be working together towards tangible outcomes has usually been the main reason why our clients keep coming back. And while some of our uptake, to use your terminology, some of our uptake rates haven't, are sometimes not as high as we would want them to be. Our ongoing engagement, as far as we can tell internally, beginning this year has been usually above 90%. So we're really focusing our efforts on that first session, and that's been having great outcomes for us.
Okay, thanks. So with that, we're actually at 2 o'clock. So I think we're going to have to wrap things up. I'm going to transition to Michael Collins and who will tell you a little bit more about a very relevant initiative, and that's the financial coaching census. And then you can follow up with us at Urban or people at branches of Financial Clinic for more questions. And I'll also be compiling some of the questions we didn't get around to and try to reach out to. And with that, Michael?
Yeah, great. I want to thank everybody for being on the line today and for this fabulous research. I think this really is a landmark study in coaching, and it really gives us a much deeper dive into how coaching works and to the extent to which it works. So we really appreciate everybody's time here today. Just real quickly, we are doing the first ever coaching census. So if you're engaged in a coaching program at some level or have in the past worked on coaching or coaching trainings, it's just a simple 10-item question survey to try to get a sense of the scope and depth of the financial coaching field. So the link is on the screen now. You can also just Google CFS Financial Coaching Census, and you'll find the link to take part in the survey. It's an online survey. All your responses will be aggregated together to sort of tell a story about the scale and scope of the financial coaching industry. So we'd appreciate any support or time that you can put into that particular initiative.
Okay, with that, I think that's a wrap. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and I hope you all got a lot out of it. And again, feel free to reach out to us. We'll send out one notice when we actually set up the recording of this too. So we'll have a link to that, as well as some other information for you all. So thank you again for joining.